Welcome back to The Truth About Cancer, a global quest. I hope you really enjoyed last night's episode, but just in case you missed any of it, here's a brief recap for you. Wow, what incredible discoveries we've been privileged to learn from these experts today. We're accomplishing and fulfilling our goals to educate, expose, and eradicate cancer through covering these vital areas of discovery in identifying cancer-killing viruses, learning the importance of cancer stem cells, the dangers of GMOs, the power of juicing, and the significance of eating the rainbow. Had you ever heard of viral therapy before? Had you ever seen the documented evidence behind it? I know that seeing a virus that selectively targets and kills cancer without harming the body is truly encouraging, as you see that experts making scientific advancements and survivors across the world are, in fact, winning the war against cancer. I know you've been empowered by learning about cancer stem cells and that this simply must be addressed in true cancer treatments and preventions. You may have been shocked to see that many conventional therapies are not even addressing this crucial origin of cancer, and consequently the victims of false treatments are having their cancer recur, and doctors and patients alike are scratching their heads and feeling trapped inside this cancer maze. The truth about cancer is found in identifying and solving cancer's root causes. You've seen the horrifying poisoning of our major food supplies through GMOs, and how truly harmful these frankenfoods are to our bodies, as well as how you can eat a diet which is GMO-free and prevent these harmful toxins from entering your body. You've seen how bringing the right foods into the body is in fact medicinal, and that eating the rainbow, while a colorful metaphor, is an inspirational reminder to supply the body with its diverse needs. Finally, you've seen how juicing can be an integral part of an efficacious protocol for beating and preventing cancer, and you've seen the inspirational stories of people that have trusted in nature's medicine to heal their body. I'm so grateful we've been able to equip you with the keys of truth on these vital topics which affect cancer, and that through the application of what you've learned, you can live free from fear, knowing that you can beat and prevent cancer in your life, as can your friends and family. As you just saw, last night's episode was jam-packed full of life-saving information, and tonight's will be the same. We're going to travel down to Tijuana, Mexico, to visit a cancer clinic that's treating and beating cancer naturally, all various types and stages of cancer. We're going to also learn about a class of chemicals that are called excitotoxins. They literally excite your brain cells to death. There's two very popular excitotoxins that we're going to learn about in tonight's episode. Of course, nutrition is a huge piece of the cancer-fighting puzzle, so we're definitely going to address that again tonight. We're going to learn some valuable nutritional nuggets in tonight's episode. But before we get there, let me ask you a question. Last night's episode, we learned that big pharmaceutical companies regularly buy off scientists and pay for studies to produce the results that they want in order to get their drugs approved. Is it possible that the nutritional industry also does the same? Let's listen to Ocean Robbins.
Well, out of all of the medical schools in the United States, less than a third of them have a single required course in nutrition.
Yeah.
So it's possible for a doctor to go through 6 years of medical school plus all their residency and never have a single course in nutrition. We've got a food industry that pays no attention to health, and we've got a health industry that pays no attention to food. And yet, food is the foundation of health. Mm. And you know, we all know intellectually that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Mm. And yet, functionally, the way we're living is the complete opposite of that. Yeah. And that's not by accident. We have a lot of money being made by the food industry for selling whatever it can sell for the lowest possible price. Mm-hmm. We've got a lot of money being made by the medical industry. That's now 19% of gross domestic product in the United States. And most of that money is being made off treating the symptoms of disease that we know how to prevent, but there's not money to be made in that. Yeah. And I'm not accusing every individual doctor of being out just to make a buck. I'm saying that we've got a system in place that systematically causes us to be sick. And I'll tell you what else, even the Association of Nutrition and Dietetics, which is the major group for the dietitians of the United States, you know, they have their annual meetings, and you know who some of their sponsors are companies like McDonald's and Coca-Cola. They literally give away Coca-Cola to everyone at those meetings for free. Yeah. And they will sponsor meetings, sponsor sessions, discussion groups on topics that literally say in the program, sponsored by McDonald's, sponsored by Coca-Cola. Now, how objective do you think that information is going to be, and how revolutionary do you think it's going to be? When you actually look at the data and what is the impact of these companies on the health of our kids, on the health of our population, then this isn't just funny, it's also scandalous.
Yeah.
That nutritionists and dietitians whose job it is to look out for the public well-being and to help individuals to get on a path of health are being bought off functionally
Right.
speaking, by industries that are polluting the health of the people these folks are supposed to be serving.
I didn't realize how nefarious the food industry was until I read Marion Nestle's book, which will be out in October 2015, called Soda Politics. And they are every bit as evil as the drug company with respect to their political lobbying, the revolving door between industry and the federal regulatory processors. So they've got, the whole system is stacked against you.
Money is oftentimes the deciding factor in decisions that directly affect your health and my health. It shouldn't be that way, but that's reality.
Well, we have to admit that healthcare is a business in America. In fact, there are vested interests in this business of healthcare. It's a $2.7 trillion a year medical industrial complex we have in America.
The cancer medical complex is this whole monolith that's been set up to make money on cancer. And so let's take the woman who is young woman who's been feeling a breast lump, goes to her doctor, she goes for a mammogram, they pick up something, she's going to go for a biopsy, they pick up something, now she's going to go for an excision, tell her she's got cancer, she's going to get chemo and radiation. It's this whole system set up to treat cancer, and it's a multi-trillion-dollar industry right now. And the problem is people aren't living longer from these therapies.
This cancer industrial complex that Dr. Brownstein just mentioned, where only certain approved treatments are covered by insurance, is alive and well in the United States. But it's not just here in the United States. This is a global thing. Let's listen to Ard Pisa describe the state of affairs in Holland.
It is by law arranged in Holland that a doctor must give chemo, radiation, and surgery, but no natural treatments not allowed in Holland.
Oh, natural treatments are not
Natural,
allowed?
no. You are going tomorrow to Keulen to Professor Dr. Robert Gorter, the Medical Center Cologne.
Yeah.
You can't open the doors for a medical center in Holland like that one. It isn't allowed in Holland.
Well, I mean, I guess at least people in Holland have access to go to the clinic in Germany. It's close.
Yeah, it's close, but you have to pay for yourself, and that's a big problem.
Okay. Insurance doesn't cover it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Here in Holland, they pay insurance for chemo, €50,000, but €30,000 for a natural treatment in Germany, they won't pay it.
Wow.
It's crazy. It's the world upside down.
I agree with Ard Pisa. The world is upside down. And a prime example of this upside down world is in our food supply. Did you know that there are certain substances that may be in popular foods like, say, Chinese food, that literally excite brain cells to death? They're called excitotoxins. And in this next clip, Dr. Russell Blaylock, who is a neurosurgeon and a scientist, describes the role of glutamate in producing and feeding cancer.
Well, MSG is monosodium glutamate. It's just a salt of glutamate. The damaging element is the glutamate, not the monosodium. You forget that. Anything that says glutamate is an excitotoxin. That means it can destroy brain cells. Now, when I did most of my research and writing about excitotoxins, it had to do with the brain, because that's where we thought all the glutamate receptors were. Now we found out that actually there's glutamate receptors in every cell in the body. Not a single cell doesn't have glutamate receptors. What that means is, if you eat glutamate, now you don't have a blood-brain barrier to even consider protecting you, because glutamate goes to all these cells without any interference. And your blood level rises very rapidly and very high for over a prolonged period of time. Humans have a higher and more persisting level of glutamate in their blood than any animal that you experiment on. Well, the second thing, once they found out there are glutamate receptors everywhere, is they found out glutamate receptors trigger and stimulate the growth and invasion of cancers of every kind. First they thought it was brain tumors only, and they demonstrated that if you had high glutamate levels around the tumor became highly invasive and grew twice as fast as a tumor that had low glutamate levels. Then they started looking at other tumors, lung tumors, colon cancer, breast cancer, prostate cancer, thyroid cancers. Every cancer they looked at, they found the same thing. Glutamate acted as a fertilizer, if you will, a stimulant for the growth of that cancer. Made it grow extremely fast, made it highly invasive, and less likely to be cured. Now, The research has continued, and we're finding that more and more. Now, the second corollary is that if you block the glutamate receptor, the tumor starts slowing its growth. It becomes less invasive. And the tumors will start dying, the cells start dying. It has no effect, negative effect on normal cells. So if you block the glutamate, normal cells reproduce, function just fine. It's only the cancer cell that starts dying when you start blocking the glutamate receptor. And then they found, well, if you take a patient who's getting chemotherapy and you give them these glutamate blockers, the chemotherapy works a lot better.
Wow, so you could take it along with the
can take it along with it.
Because I know a lot of people that are watching are on chemo now.
Right. And so this is a really hot area of research. The big question is, you don't want to block all glutamate receptors because the brain needs them for its function. You wouldn't be able to remember, you'd fall into a coma. So you want to do a selective way to cut down that glutamate production. Well, there's an enzyme in your cells called glutaminase, and its function is to convert glutamine into glutamate. And that's how that cancer cell starts producing lots of glutamate. And if you block that enzyme, this tumor starts shrinking.
Are there natural glutamate blockers that we should be familiar with?
Fortunately, there's a lot of them.
Okay.
Virtually all your flavonoids that I've discussed, curcumin, quercetin, ellagic acid, resveratrol, anthocyanins, they all reduce glutamate receptor activity. And that's their advantage. And they do it safely, so that the brain can function normally, but the cancer can't use it.
Fascinating information from Dr. Blaylock that glutamate actually acts as a fertilizer for cancer cells. And I thought it was really interesting what he said. It's not the monosodium. You know, most people have heard of MSG, monosodium glutamate. It's not the monosodium part that's the problem. It's the glutamate. And there's many different types of glutamate. Let's listen to some more from Dr. Blaylock as he shares.
Cancer cells use two major fuels.
Okay.
They use glucose and they use glutamine. Of the two,
Sugar.
glutamine is a more powerful stimulant for cancer cell growth.
Okay.
And
So we hear that, watch out for sugar, glucose, because cancer cells do feed on it, but you're saying glutamine is worse.
yeah, because the Warburg effect is the fact that normal cells use both an anaerobic and aerobic system, the Krebs cycle. Cancer cells only use the anaerobic system. It was thought. Glutamine can work the aerobic system and produce a lot more energy. So if you're eating a lot of sugar and you eat a lot of glutamine, you're really stimulating your cancer powerfully. And so the idea is you want to cut down on your glutamine intake. Well, a lot of people are promoting glutamine as a way to heal the gut, leaky gut syndrome. And so they're saying take 5, 6, 10 grams of glutamine. That is a powerful stimulant for degenerative brain disorders, a powerful stimulant for cancer growth. So you don't want to do that. There's a lot better ways to repair the GI tract that work better and safer and actually inhibit cancer.
But not glutamine.
But not glutamine. The other thing is foods, for instance, beans like black beans are high in glutamine. Mushrooms are high in glutamine. So these foods that are high in glutamine, you don't want to eat either. You want to try to eat only low glutamine foods, and a lot of those are your vegetables. Okay. And some cancer researchers think, well, this may be why people who are on vegetarian diets and juicing seem to have these spontaneous cures of their cancer, is because they have such a low glutamine intake and a low sugar intake.
Wow.
Both.
So they're getting rid of the two fuels.
You're getting rid of two fuels. Now, cancer cannot use fat for its fuel. So coconut oil is a good way to keep your energy up without having to resort to sugar, and cancer can't use it.
MSG is one form of glutamate. What are some other sources of glutamate to avoid?
Well, the industry, really got hammered when my book Excitotoxin came out, and everybody was looking at glutamate, and so they started taking MSG off the label, and they even put on the label contains no MSG, and then they put sources of glutamate in it, like hydrolyzed protein, soy protein isolate, soy protein concentrate, autolyzed yeast, caseinate is a very common one. All of those are extremely high in glutamate, but the law allows them to put those in the foods and still put on the label contains no MSG.
Because they're not monosodium glutamate.
They're not monosodium glutamate,
Okay.
but they're just as dangerous and harmful as monosodium glutamate.
So you want to watch out for all the forms of glutamate.
All the forms of glutamate, and particularly soy. Soy is naturally high in glutamate and glutamine. as well as aluminum and fluoride and manganese.
Wow.
So it's got a lot of toxins in it. Soy is a very bad food, and particularly a liquid food. If you get it in milk and soy liquid products, it's very high glutamate levels. Your blood level will rise as much as 20-fold to 50-fold.
And that's even if it's organic soy, right?
Doesn't make any difference. It's natural to the plant, you know. And in my estimation, people shouldn't be consuming soy products.
Dr. Blaylock mentioned that glutamate is not only a fuel, but it's also a fertilizer for cancer cells. Now, when you hear fuel for cancer, most people that have been paying attention thus far in the series are going to say sugar. And sugar is something that we must address. Sugar is one of the primary fuels for cancer. In this next clip, we listen to a scientist describe what we need to really look out for when it comes to sugar. Are all sugars bad? Or are there certain things that we need to look for as far as sugar is concerned? Potentially the spikes of sugar, the glycemic index. What is it that we need to look out for in order to avoid sugar fueling cancer cells?
The question then becomes, from practical perspective, what is a cancer patient to do? Should they not eat sugar? Should they eat sugar? The good thing there is that the source of sugar matters. You know, how you're eating your sugar makes a difference. Today, if you look at the patterns of sugar eating back in the 1960s, most of our sugar came from sugar cane. And that sugar cane, if you look at what it's made of, it is mostly sucrose. So it is 50% glucose, 50% fructose. Over time, what has happened is that high fructose corn syrup has kind of caught up with it. There are a lot of indications to show that high fructose corn syrup has got several negative health effects. Inside cancer, there's a processing center for glucose. And inside any cell, there's always a processing center for glucose. There are what we call the hexokinase receptors, HK2, so to speak, in cancer cells, and in normal cells as well. The only difference is that there are way more HK2s in cancer cells than they are in regular cells. And the problem that happens is that now you've got a hungry dog out here, and you've got a dog that is not so hungry, that will get satiated easily, and you have a sudden spike of sugar. Guess what? The hungry dog is going to overfeed on that sugar. So what we really are looking to do is to stop the spikes of sugar. That's why we're looking to give people diets that have got a low glycemic index. A lot of people think, okay, fruits and vegetables, that is something that we recommend at Hope for Cancer, that, cancer patient should eat fruits and vegetables. A lot of people think, oh my God, fruits and vegetables are so high in sugar. Oh, how is that going to affect our cancer cells? The answer lies really in not so much the composition of the sugar itself, but in how it is delivered. So in the case of sugars, if you look at the balance of what content most fruits have, it's different. Some fruits have got a higher level of fructose, some fruits have got a higher level of glucose, some of them have sucrose, so you have various varieties. Apples, pears, they're pretty good to eat because they've got a relatively higher fraction of fructose to glucose, but they have both. They have sucrose as well. But they also have a lot of fiber with them. So when you're eating them, what the fiber does is that it slows down the absorption of the sugars into the body, and that makes sure that you're not going through those incredible spikes that are causing the absorption of the sugars into the cancer cells, which then feeds into their mechanism of growth, because the more sugar they get, the more they can grow and they can replicate themselves.
Okay. So just to reiterate, what we have to watch out for are the sugar spikes. And what might cause those sugar spikes? It's the man-made processed sugars, the candies, the sweets. But we also have to watch out for sugar's effect on the immune system.
Sugar really impairs the immune system. In fact, in the 1970s, there was a scientist named John Ellie. And John actually, what he did, Dr. Ellie, he actually looked in detail at what happens, how do white blood cells run? What's different about white blood cells than normal cells? And what he found was that white blood cells actually need 20 times more vitamin C than normal cells. Now, he also looked at what's the pathway for white blood cells to get the vitamin C that they need, because we know vitamin C is an antioxidant, protects the white blood cells from oxidative stress. And of course, most of your listeners, most people should know white blood cells are kind of like your military, right? So they're going out and they're fighting wars every single day, and so they need a lot of protection. So how does the vitamin C actually get into the white blood cell? That's the question. And what he found was that it goes through the same pathway that sugar or glucose gets into the cell, through insulin. And so what that means is when blood sugar elevates, our body naturally produces this hormone called insulin. Insulin takes the sugar, puts it into the cell where it belongs. And so what we know is that cells, including white blood cells, they have a greater affinity for glucose. The insulin receptor itself has a greater affinity for glucose than it does vitamin C. And so what that actually means is that when blood sugar is elevated, we are unable to get the vitamin C into the cell. And so there's something that Dr. L.A. came up with. It was called the phagocytic index. And it was really just this measurement of how good a white blood cell is at destroying either abnormal cells like cancer or bacteria, virus, something along those lines.
How many bad guys can it kill?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what he was looking at. And so here's what he found was that a blood sugar of 120 actually reduces your phagocytic index by 75%. And so we look at a blood sugar of 120. We know that if you have a fasting blood sugar of 120, you're considered basically pre-diabetic. Okay, 125, 126 is diabetic. So most people are like, well, I don't have a fasting blood sugar of that. However, most people in society, let's say you eat cereal in the morning, you're just eating that bowl of cereal in the morning for the next 3 to 4 hours, you're going to have a blood sugar above 120. Most people are.
Just from cereal?
Just from cereal, right?
Not even sugared cereal, just because of the grains?
Exactly. Just eating Cheerios, right? Having a glass of orange juice, right, with that. Your blood sugar is going to be pumped up. And what's happening there is you're actually reducing your white blood cells' ability to break down cancer cells. Then if you go in at lunch, you have a sandwich, right? You have these high-carb meals all throughout the day. You're actually reducing your phagocytic index. Most people are spending 16 hours a day with reduced immune function.
So as we just heard from Dr. Jockers, sugar actually burdens and impairs the immune system. It fuels cancer cells. But that's not the only reason to stay away from processed man-made sugars like candies and sweets. Another reason that we need to stay away from it is that it's been recently shown through studies that have been published in peer-reviewed journals that sugar actually creates cancer cells. This is called oncogenesis.
Well, a new study came out that showed for the first time that cancer doesn't only just feed off of sugar, but that sugar can induce a cancerous phenotype in cells, which means it basically changed it from a cell that just likes glucose to one that exhibits invasive activity, where it's basically now becoming an independent cell that wants to go out and invade other tissue. So it's the first time that we saw that sugar is a cancer risk, much like smoking is. It's not just that it feeds cancer, it's that it can actually cause cancer.
So in light of this information that Sayer just shared with us, that sugar is oncogenic, it actually causes cancer, does it make any sense to have bowls of candies and sweets in the office of oncologists that are treating cancer patients?
And how the oncologist's office, and I've seen it where you go into their office and they have candy bowls with candy there because cancer patients on chemotherapy are so weak and they need a little pick-me-up. And I have looked at that at different times in oncologist's office going,
what are they thinking?
What are you thinking?
When you finish your chemo in a conventional setting, they give you cookies and ice cream or candy. That is tantamount to putting gasoline on a fire. That means these oncologists are guilty of crimes against humanity. They are killing their patients.
One of the tests that we use to diagnose cancer is a PET scan. So with a PET scan, we take radiated sugar, right, and we inject it in you. Because cancer cells take up sugar so much more efficiently than normal cells, they will take up that radiated sugar, and then we're able to see on the CAT scan where the sugar is, which that tells us where the cancer is, right? So yeah, so we're very aware of the dependence on cancer cells for prodigious amounts of sugar. And that's why cancer patients die of starvation, is because the cancer cells will suck up all the sugar from normal cells.
This is a cell. We're just going to pretend these are both cells.
Okay.
The little pins that I've stuck in, and I have 10 pins in this ball. these represent insulin receptors. And we know that when we eat even a piece of whole wheat bread, that has as much glycemic rise as a little Snickers bar. But we don't think about the bread as being sugar. That's how a lot of us, me included, got into the situation. But you eat that, your blood sugar rises, and the pancreas puts out some insulin, and it comes and opens these little doors, and so the sugar can get in the cell for energy.
Okay.
So the doctors use what happens is we run high blood sugars systemically as Americans with the standard American diet.
Because we eat a bad diet.
Yes, and so the body doesn't like that. It doesn't like that high blood sugar because it burns your neurons, it messes with your vision, people get numb feet, their wounds won't heal. So the body's going to put more and more of these little receptors in to try and get the sugar out of the blood into the cell. And so eventually you end up with this, and this is what a cancer cell looks like. A cancer cell, from what my research, is 15 to 16 times the number of insulin receptors as a regular cell. So when you go for your PET scan, which in the United States right now in 2015, the way that they diagnose cancer is with a positive PET scan or a biopsy. And it takes years for the tumor to get to be at least half a centimeter so it will show up. So you go in for the test, they start an IV, and they inject you with radioactive glucose. It goes around the body. You wait for about an hour in a little room by yourself because nobody else wants to be around you because you're radioactive.
You're radioactive, yeah.
And the radioactive glucose, the glucose will go to these insulin receptors and it goes in the cell. And so then when they take your picture, these cells light up.
Shows up.
So you have to wait long enough for enough of these cells to grow to absorb enough of that radioactive glucose to light up on the screen.
I know. You're kind of sad right now. Don't want to give up the sugar because you have a sweet tooth, and I do too. So does my wife, Charlene. I think everybody that's watching probably has a bit of a sweet tooth. The good news is you don't have to give up sugar. You don't have to give up good tasting food to be able to live a healthy lifestyle. You do have to give up man-made processed sugars if you're going to be healthy, but nature produces all kinds of natural sugars that are really good for us. The reason they're good for us is because they contain the whole spectrum of nutrients, they contain the fiber, and so when we eat nature's candies, we eat these fruits, especially the fruits and the vegetables that nature produces, we're going to be able to satisfy that sweet tooth while we're at the same time keeping our bodies healthy through nature's pharmacy.
Welcome to my pharmacy. I mean, this is where we start talking about, people think that modern medicine has to be controlling, invasive, disabling, expensive, and dangerous. And that's what most modern medicine is. In fact, real medicine is phytonutrients that nourish the body. They're antioxidants. They regulate abnormal growth. They stimulate apoptosis or programmed cell death. We're going to start with one of my 60 fruit trees, black raspberries. What we have here, Ty, is arguably one of the most impressive medicines that you can find, anthocyanins, antioxidants, ORAC, so oxygen radical absorbent capacity off the charts. Add ellagic acid, which stimulates cancer cells to commit suicide. And what you have is this feeds the brain, the lens of the eye, it prevents cancer. This is real medicine. We move on. Well, you can see these figs, and we'll see if we can find something that's ripe because it's the early part of the harvest. Here we go. Ty, you get to taste that. So,
okay.
Long verde means green, but inside they're purple. If you'd show the camera what we have inside there.
Okay.
And so phycin is one of the more important phytochemicals in figs, and again, proven to stimulate apoptosis or programmed cell death in cancer cells. Delicious, and if you think of all the ingredients, one of the things you're looking for here is prebiotics. Plant food, fruits, vegetables, grains, legumes contain substances that we cannot digest, but our 100 trillion cells in the gut are using it for food. And if we feed our gut properly, it's called the microbiota, what we end up is we're making vitamin biotin, vitamin K. We're also stimulating the immune system. What they find now is 2/3 of the immune system surrounds the gut. And by things that we cannot digest, that prebiotics are going to improve our immune system. This is dark figs, so this is black mission figs. This one's not quite ripe, but you can see we're going to have a great harvest here.
Yeah.
And, you know, people will think, yeah, well, you're some rich doctor in California. I can't afford that. 62% of Americans own their own home. You don't need much land. About 20 years ago, Sierra Club put out a book called Edible Landscaping, in which they talked about if you're going to spend time on it, if you're going to water it, make it something you can eat. And 2/3 of Americans could do the same thing. And if you don't have land, there's a lot of cities where they're taking land that's unused, downtown Detroit and other places, and they say, this is a community garden. Put some fruit trees in. It might be a couple of years before you get a harvest, but a garden, you're going to get it in a couple of months.
Grow gardens, not grass, right?
Exactly. And I live in a desert. Southern California is a desert. We're in the worst drought in history. Why would you water something unless you can eat it? And here's an interesting point. We were good to Mother Earth, and it nourishes us. And so there's this symbiotic relationship. I feed the soil, and then the plant feeds me. And the same thing for you folks.
I mean, by the way, Patrick, that fig that I just ate, that's the sweetest fig I've ever tasted.
Delicious?
That's incredible.
I'll tell you what, one of the things that I do, I add Epsom salts to the soil. Epsom salt is magnesium sulfate. If you look at green plants, what you have here is green chlorophyll. And chlorophyll takes the energy of the sun combined with water and carbon dioxide, and it makes sugar. And then from that it makes proteins and all these exotic phytochemicals that protect us from disease. Well, the beauty of this whole business of that, the middle of that chlorophyll molecule is magnesium. If the plant doesn't get enough magnesium, it doesn't make enough chlorophyll. Doesn't get enough chlorophyll, it won't make enough sugar. It's not going to get sweet enough. And all the other chemicals that it makes. So I put like a handful of Epsom salts in a gallon of water and dissolve it at the base of the tree about 3 times a year. Delicious fruit.
That's a great tip for people that are growing their own food.
Do you see any bugs, anything on that?
No.
This is all biodynamic, organic, and I'm not fighting any bugs. Essentially, the plant has its own immune system, just like you and I do, just like you people do. These are Suriname cherries.
Okay.
And fascinating. Suriname cherry. I get 3 harvests a year out of this.
And by the way, you guys are missing out. You have to be behind the camera. I'm getting to eat this. This is incredible.
Well, the hard part is to eat and talk at the same time. I find I salivate so much and then I can't talk well, which is
I'll let you do most talking. I'll do most of the eating.
Perfect.
I'll be happy here.
Well, think about this. What you have is these beautiful dark cherries, and they're sweet, aren't they? They're delicious. And what nature is saying is, all right, what I got is some sugar here, and the fungus living around us in the trillions wants to eat this. And so the plant has to create its own protection. It creates a substance called phytoalexins, and that is, one of those is resveratrol. People have heard about it in red grapes. Grapes are another thing. So the sweet thing in the grape has to protect itself. So if a fungus lands on this, and it eats that phytoalexin, it dies. It's sort of its own, it's a pre-drug, essentially. The drug companies can't duplicate this stuff. And that's the beauty of what we've got here is that you cannot patent a natural substance, and that's why the $280 billion a year drug industry can't come up with something as effective as this. Phytoalexins in red and green fruits and vegetables have been shown to be anti-cancer the same way that they protect the plant against fungus. Mulberries. These are Oscar mulberries.
Now this one wasn't ripe last year.
You're right. You're right. Came at a different time of the year. So dark purple is going to have this rich mixture of phytochemicals, bioflavonoids, carotenoids. The medicinal value is beyond argument.
Oh my goodness. That's ridiculously sweet.
Delicious. And this is why I'm saying we're not denying ourselves, people. People think if I can't have my Twinkies and Coke every day, no, this stuff is delicious. And once you develop an appetite for it, it's fascinating is the human tongue has got 4 sensors: sour, sweet, salt, and bitter. That sweet is for fruit. The earliest food of humans was fruit, eggs, and insects. I'm not telling you have to eat insects, but eggs and fruit are good. And the sweetness is to make fruit taste good and feel good in our body. And then what the food manufacturers have done is said, we're going to create all of these substitute sugars, which are not good for you. And now we're eating 140 pounds per year of refined white sugar, which is killing us. Obesity, diabetes, depression, heart disease, cancer, among other diseases that come with refined sugar. This is a different sugar. And what you find is if you take the fructose and other natural sugars that are in the matrix, matrix means mother in Latin, and literally here is this sugar sitting in the middle of this cell membrane, and it's got all these phytochemicals around it and fiber, and it works. And if you take a different sugar and take all the matrix away, which is white sugar, corn syrup, now it's killing people instead of healing people.
There are so many good non-toxic ways to treat cancer that is laughable what standard medicine is doing. But they all work in different ways. For instance, the salvestrol works on an enzyme system. CYP1B1 is the enzyme system that it works on. Well, this is a natural product found in fruits and vegetables that CYP1B1 enzyme converts into a toxic product. So this fruit extract, vegetable extract, acts as a prodrug. It's not a drug. Your normal cells don't have that enzyme system, so it can't convert it. So it doesn't hurt normal cells. But the cancer cells have the CYP1B1, so it converts it into a toxic substance, killing the cancer cells. So that's just an instance of how a particular natural therapy might work. It was found because, and why don't we have salvestrol today in our body? Well, natural fruits and vegetables produce it just in the last day or two, right as they become ripe, because that's when they're higher in sugars, and that's when fungi tend to attack the fruits and vegetables. So that's when they make salvestrol. Who eats vine-ripened fruit today?
Unless you have your own garden, you don't.
That's it. Nobody, because it's all picked green.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're eating it in a natural food store or an organic food store, it's still picked green to ship to you. Because that's the only way they can get it there and not lose half their produce to spoilage. So we are eating all this food that's salvestrol depleted, one of the very agents that Mother Nature uses to kill cancer cells, which Ma and Pa got back on the farm. But in the city, buying it from the store, we don't get.
Things like celery. We know that celery stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is that calming part of the nervous system. So, you know, perfect snack is a bit of celery with some peanut butter or nut butter, make it a little bit more tasty. And the reason it does that is because it contains this plant hormone called apigenin. And apigenin is powerfully anti-cancer, and anyone can Google apigenin and they'll come up with, you know, a load of scientific references. And then the other thing which I often recommend food-wise for people with stress is foods with B6. So sweet potato, pumpkin seeds, seafood, because B6 improves or stimulates serotonin in the body, which is that feel-good neurotransmitter. But there's all these studies recently showing that high blood levels of B6 are powerfully anti-cancer. So you can reduce your risk of cancer by up to 49% by eating a vitamin B6 rich diet.
One of the best strategies, and I learned this at Hippocrates Health Institute here in Florida, is growing sprouts. And there's a number of different sprouts. There's dozens and dozens of different that you can use. But the most efficient and effective one that I found that seems to provide the best value is sunflower seed sprouts. And they're literally, you can purchase them at many health food stores or even Whole Foods, but you'll pay like $30 a pound. But you can grow them yourself for about 10, 20 cents a pound, which is really, it's a simple strategy. You grow them from seed to harvest in about a week, maybe 10 days.
Really?
Yeah, that's all it takes. And you say, well, why would I do that? Well, it's easy, it's simple, it's fun. Your kids love to see that. You know, it kind of catalyzes and piques that interest in gardening. But also, they're 30 times more nutrient dense than the organic vegetables you're growing in your backyard. So it's really a powerhouse of nutrition. It's all condensed and concentrated in those sprouts.
And you can grow it in your own house.
Yeah, easy to do, you know, simple to do. Actually, the biggest component of my salad are the sunflower seed sprouts.
The thing which I've paid a lot of attention to recently is eating seeds. Now, I'm going to use that term generally. Seeds would include nuts, it would include beans, anything which you can put in the ground and it'll grow. A pea would be a seed in that regard. Eggs, you know, something like that. Caviar in particular, fabulous.
Okay.
So seeds are tremendously valuable because the seed is such a wise little packet. It concentrates nutrients about 20-fold and 30-fold more than the rest of the fruit. So it's this fabulous packet of concentrated nutrition. And what we know is that it's got all sorts of genetic spare parts. If it's not going to be a seed that grows into a plant, that's available for you and I to repair our DNA and our RNA with. It also has tremendous stem cell precursors, especially in the husk of seeds.
The day when my mom was diagnosed with cancer, on the same day my daughter was born. So I had two big news in the same day. So one beautiful news and the other one pretty sad. And that was very sad, but at the same time, I was determined and I believed that I can do something about it, that we can beat the cancer. I believed that I can save my mom. So although everybody around me was panicking and being really scared that mom was diagnosed, and straight away they told her that there's nothing she can do and it's only that she's got 6 months to live, I was determined that something positive will come out of this, that we will save her with natural treatments. However, when I was talking to my mom, I understood that she didn't want to try natural methods, that she was ready to go the conventional path and go through chemotherapy. And I knew what that meant. I knew that once she had the conventional treatment, that was bad news. I knew the consequences of that. So that was devastating. I had a baby, and at the same time, I was watching my mom just getting worse and worse every day. Injecting chemicals into someone's bloodstream, even if you're the healthiest person, fit health person, if someone would inject chemicals into your body, that would make them sick. Cancer patients are already unwell, and on the top of it, they are given the chemicals. So I can't find any sense in that, unfortunately. I feel that both experiences were taken away. Experience of my mom bonding with her granddaughter, and for my daughter to just remember just a little bit of her grandma, that was taken away. Because I couldn't save my mom's life, I felt with every patient after, I gave everything I possibly could in order to save their life. And because of that, we had countless cases of people recovering from cancer. The experiences which I didn't have with my mom, I thought that I lost them, that I will never get them back. However, through helping other people regain their life and watching grandmothers with the grandchildren and husbands and wives and the families being together is just beautiful, and I'm really grateful that I can experience that moment looking at the families being together and lives saved.
Wow, that's so encouraging that Gosia was able to regain what she thought she had lost in the death of her mother through helping others experience abundant life by helping them detoxify and nourish their bodies with nature's medicine. Another amazing remedy from nature's medicine chest is the chaga mushroom, or as Dr. Boris Greenblatt from Russia refers to, the Russian curcumin.
Another very famous thing in Russia is chaga.
Chaga mushroom.
Chaga mushroom. It has so many benefits. It's almost like curcumin. So you can say it's like a Russian curcumin because it basically does everything. It's anti-cancer, it's anti-inflammatory, it's got lots of minerals, and 15% of chaga is ash. And ash has lots of manganese. And manganese is a very important factor in enzymes, activating enzymes.
Manganese?
Yes,
okay.
Yeah. So it's unique, but it's taken from a birch tree. So in those places where you have these birch trees, I think chaga is very good to
So
use.
you have medicine growing on the tree in the form
Absolutely.
of chaga mushrooms. Just go pick
Absolutely.
them.
I mean, there's a study from Liverpool University here showing that, a serve of broccoli a day reduces your risk of colon cancer 50%. Well, imagine then if you're having broccoli sprouts, which contain up to 100 times more sulforaphane than normal broccoli. And people are always a bit like, well, what do I do with the broccoli sprouts? They've got kind of a mustardy flavour. They are quite strong, but I find, if you put them in your juicer with, beetroot and celery and carrot, it kind of, if you're not mad about the flavour, it does mask them a bit.
Yeah.
Just sprinkle a few on salads.
Sure.
I mean, they're so potent that you only need a little bit of them.
Wow, Nature's Medicine Chest is truly phenomenal. The sulforaphanes in broccoli, the sprouts with all of their amazing nutrient profile, chaga mushrooms, Russian curcumin, as Dr. Boris Greenblatt called it. Now, let's learn a little bit about the citrus fruits, grapefruit and oranges.
And we know from the National Institutes of Health in America, I think it was Mark Levine, studies in 2008 showing that over 50,000 milligrams vitamin C can take on cancer and leave healthy cells intact,
Right,
which is
selectively
wonderful.
toxic.
Exactly. So my mum did that. I mean, there's also studies from Japan showing that women with uterine cancer lived 15 times longer when they had vitamin C.
I find grapefruit a fascinating subject, Ty, because every pharmacist, every medical doctor tells all their patients don't touch grapefruit. And what happens is grapefruit accelerates a detoxification enzyme in the liver, which changes the pharmacokinetics of drugs. So if you take a drug, it will have different activity if you're on grapefruit than if you're not.
Okay.
And so they tell you, don't eat grapefruit if you're on drugs. And I agree, I'm not against that. I got another idea. Get healthy and start eating the grapefruit because it improves the function of your liver in detoxification pathways. So, while everybody says don't eat grapefruit, get healthy and then start eating grapefruit. Blood orange. Here we go, Ty. Blood orange.
Okay.
What we have is, you want to use your strong Texas hands just to rip the thing open. Basically, oranges are good for you. Citrus has got everything from bioflavonoids, rutin, hesperidin, vitamin C, fiber, all those things that I mentioned. But blood orange goes a step further and it develops these red pigments that we were talking about, not unlike the mulberry and the deep inside of the fig. And so this is going to look a little bit like a beet inside.
Yeah, it is darker.
And so the ORAC score, once again, oxygen radical absorbent capacity, is just phenomenal.
Pop this thing
There
open
you go.
here so you
Just
can
pop
see.
it open.
Don't want to get it too close to this white shirt because it is dark, as you can see. Wow, I've never seen orange juice that way. Look at that.
So blood orange is another one of these things. If you live in a reasonably warm climate, you can eat this thing and it's
really sweet.
off the charts for all of the phytochemicals that are going to protect you against heart disease, cancer, aging, inflammation. It's phenomenal. I have a few silent partners that work with me, the birds. And what I sort of give them, I tithe to them. I give them 10%, they eat the insects, and everybody's happy. This is a peach tree, and there was a study that came out of Harvard in which they showed that people who ate peaches twice a week lowered their risk for breast cancer by 40%. How simple can it get? If that was a drug, it would have been headlines in USA Today, CNN, everywhere, and the drug company's stock would have doubled. There's at least 8,000 different carotenoids, at least 20,000 different bioflavonoids in fruits and vegetables. And they find that these things are extraordinary as anti-aging, antioxidant, anti-inflammatory. There's 12 million Americans who are on the Vioxx Celebrex drugs. They have chronic inflammation, chronic pain. Eat more fruits and vegetables. And here's the soundbite I hope our viewers can take home. A healthy human body is self-regulating and self-repairing. It will protect itself from infections. It will slow down the aging process. If it finds any cancer, it will eliminate them. It will keep the blood vessels open. Why don't you and I have a headache right now? Some people have a headache. Why don't you and I? Because the body is self-regulating and self-repairing. It takes in these various minerals, it regulates blood pressure, and this miraculous process occurs because we feed the body properly. And much of that comes from fruits and vegetables.
And I feel even better than I did when I got here because of all the fruits I've just eaten.
Well, you're looking good.
Fantastic. Now, in that last clip, when Dr. Quillen gave me a taste of that incredibly sweet mulberry, if you remember that, it was just incredible. It tasted like just pure sugar, but it was nature's medicine. One of the things he mentioned was that the food industry is creating all of these substitute sugars. What was he talking about? That leads us to excitotoxin number 2 tonight, aspartame.
Aspartame has been studied for a long time, and what a researcher did, he said, I'm going to look at all the research that's been done, those that are sponsored by the makers of aspartame versus independent studies. What he found, virtually all the independent studies found harmful problems. None of the ones sponsored by the maker found any problem.
So you've got to look at who does the studies.
And so what the maker does is he goes out and he pays scientists to come up with articles or ghostwritten articles that says it's safe. And he fills the literature with it. And then when he goes before a camera, he says, look, these are the pile of studies that shows it's safe. And so the news commentator looks at this and says, well, gee, there's been hundreds and hundreds of studies that shows it's safe. They don't even show the real studies that were done, the carefully done studies showed it's not. Now, the carefully done studies show that it's a carcinogenic agent and that it combines with other carcinogens like nitrites from your food, become even more carcinogenic. They found in the original studies, to get approval for using NutraSweet, in the original studies they found increased brain tumors, about a 6-fold increase in brain tumors. They found increased lung tumors, breast cancers, breast tumors, all sort of tumors and thyroid cancers were found. But what the investigation did after the approval, because they approved it over all these findings, they found out that they were taking out the tumor from the experimental animal and throwing it away and writing down that it was normal.
Really?
Yeah, all this was discovered. It's under oath in congressional hearing. So a lot of these amoral shenanigans were done to get it approved in the first place. The guy who was head of the committee that approved it, after he approved it, within months, he went to work for the company that was the promoter of aspartame. And so that's sort of this revolving door we talk about between industry and government.
What I found out through the example of aspartame being the best example of how bad the situation actually is, the medical deception, that it's neurotoxic, it's cancer promoting, it's ruining your immune system, your endocrine system. So it's a very dangerous substance we should not be drinking or eating in what way whatsoever. I didn't believe this when I first heard this, so I researched it and I was like, this is the best example of how bad this industry is doing its job, how good it's actually doing to ruin our health. And I found out more. I found out that there's not just conflict of interest, but there's actually a revolving door policy between the authorities that are supposed to be guarding the henhouse, but the fox is guarding the henhouse, so to speak.
The Italian study was a study, I think his name was Rosini, but he is one of the most respected researchers on carcinogenic agents. What he does is he tests these agents to see if they cause cancer. So they gave him this project and said, look at this aspartame and see if it'll cause cancer in animals. He did the largest animal study ever done. Now, his research is considered impeccable, almost unquestionable, because he's so carefully in doing it and so respected. He did it and he found, well, there seemed to be an increase in lymphoma and leukemia and probably breast cancer and maybe brain tumor. And so they wouldn't accept it. So he redid it with a lifetime study of the animal, as you would in humans, because the human's going to keep drinking this stuff for a lifetime. And he found it's definitely an increase in leukemia and lymphoma, most likely increase in breast cancer and brain tumor. So then it went to the United States. The CDC said, well, we'll look at his study and give a final determination for the American audience. And everybody knew how it was going to turn out, and it's exactly what they said. Well, we've had some criticisms of how this study was done. You know what the criticism was? Well, you did a lifetime study. We cut it off at 2 years, and he said, of course you do. That's when the tumors start appearing. So they cut off the study before the tumor started showing up.
It's the same thing that Monsanto did with the GMO studies.
Yeah, yeah, oh, exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. They knew at which point you were going to see the problems with GMO, so they cut the study off before that appeared. And then they said, we didn't find anything.
And they did the same thing with the aspartame.
Yeah, I mean, it's prestidigitation. It's a magic act.
But what about weight gain? Do you or do you know someone that drinks diet soda because they think it'll help them to lose weight? Now, this is an area that we've all been lied to, in addition to the other areas that we've been lied to that we're learning about in this series. Let's listen to Dr. Blaylock describe the effect of aspartame on leptin and the way that affects obesity.
What they found is in the hypothalamus is where leptin operates to curb your appetite. And there's receptors there in this particular nucleus, the arcuate nucleus. And so unless that leptin can react with that receptor, it doesn't work. Well, glutamate is the transmitter for that receptor. And aspartame has aspartic acid, which is also an excitotoxin just like glutamate. So it burns out that nucleus, so now the leptin won't work. Leptin levels start rising, which is inflammatory, and you start gaining weight. So actually what they found is aspartame is not good for weight loss. It actually stimulates gaining of weight. The other thing is that the tyrosine in it, the phenylalanine, stimulates hypoglycemia, which makes you hungry.
So you're going to eat more.
So you're going to eat more.
Now that's really amazing, isn't it? Diet sodas actually make you hungrier after you drink them because of the effect of aspartame on leptin. It's truly amazing, something we need to pay attention to if we're diet soda drinkers. I'm not personally, but I used to drink them before I knew this information. And I think one of the things that we need to remember is that once we have this information, now we're responsible for it. Pepsi recently removed aspartame from their diet sodas, but they replaced it with Splenda or sucralose. Is this really a step in the right direction?
So they didn't choose stevia. They didn't choose organic whole cane sugar. They went to a form of sugar that's let's say it's engineered in a lab. And basically they take sucrose and they turned it into what they call sucralose. And they've added chlorine atoms, 3 extra chlorine atoms to this. And it still has some level of sweetness. And they say, okay, 0 or less calories, fewer calories, so we're good. We're not aspartame anymore because they couldn't beat back the bad press on aspartame. So I've joked, I said, listen, if you want to use sucralose, pour it in your pool out back instead of buying chlorine because you got it, it's gonna sanitize your pool. But you think about, what is chlorine designed to do? It's designed to kill microbes. What about your gut flora? You put this stuff in your gut flora, you're going to wipe it out. It elevates the pH of your colon, which also causes all kinds of aberrant issues. Headaches have been commonly linked to this, sometimes seizure disorders, damage to DNA. Mouse studies are showing damage to DNA from sucralose. So no, not a good substitute. Maybe you could say marginally better, but that's not saying much.
Stevia would have been a better choice.
Well, much better.
Or even organic cane sugar would have been
And if you get the chromium with it, you're good.
So, as we just learned from Robert Scott Bellamy, one of the main reasons to avoid sucralose or Splenda is because of the fact that it devastates the gut. And the gut is where we generate our immune system. So it can't be good for us. Now maybe it hasn't been proved to create brain tumors like aspartame has yet, or it's not quite as devastating, but it's still not going to be good for us. But don't be discouraged. As we mentioned earlier, nature's pharmacy is very tasty. And there are certain herbs that nature produces that are very sweet, one of them being stevia. So one option for you is if you like sodas, and don't drink them very often because they're very acidic, but if you like sodas and you want to have a diet soda, there are sodas now that are sweetened with stevia. So you don't have any of these toxic additives like aspartame or Splenda being added to the drink. It's a good option.
From a nutrient perspective, the 3 basics that are so simple, and selenium is number 1 on the list because there's nothing as far as one humble trace mineral that has been identified as the most powerful preventive mineral in terms of preventing cancer, but remediating it, and talk about reversing cancer as well. And this is where our good friend Jonathan Emord has sued the FDA and won, 7 or 8 times now on the issue of actually being able to label as a preventive, much less a reversal for cancer. The science is so, the journals are replete with selenium preventing cancer, selenium reversing cancer. So I argue that we must do a food form, not a synthetic isolate, because in food it comes in many forms in combination with all the cofactors. And I utilize 200 micrograms a day as a preventive. But when I talk to someone with breast cancer or otherwise, I'm saying going up to 1,000 micrograms and sometimes 1,200 micrograms. But I bet you'll hear people object and say that's dangerous, that's toxic, selenium will kill you. No.
Not if it's food form.
Not if it's food form. And the studies that the FDA used to say selenium was dangerous was based on synthetic isolates, wrong form, that could bioaccumulate. And then, of course, the toxicity associated with too much selenium is brittle nails, skin issues, hair falling out. And if you stop the selenium intake within a few days to a couple of weeks, that's reversed. So you're not going to die of it. But the whole food form is not going to cause you that. Then, the chromium. This is interesting because the GTF chromium is something that's been robbed from the soils. It's been robbed from the foods that contain it, like whole grains, even the sugar cane that has the highest content of chromium. And this chromium is critical because it robs the cancer cells of their ability to grab the sugar. So if you eat anything with sugar, anything with sugar, and you don't have adequate chromium stores, you can't lock it away before the cancer cells get it. So if you took 100 micrograms 3 times a day of a GTF, a glucose tolerance factor form of a whole food chromium, you have a transformation ability to starve the cancer cells, even if you get a little bit. I'm not arguing that we should eat refined carbs, that's not the point, but there's always going to be some level of carbohydrate. And you have to be able to bind it with minerals. That chromium is like the dock worker that helps to offload the sugars into the cells and also relinquish from the cells that have it, that it's stored as fat or some other form, to bring it back out for your healthy cells to utilize as energy.
Wow, that's a huge...
Keeping it away from the cancer cells.
Chromium then. And then so what's the third?
The third is preventing metastasis. How do we do that? Strength and integrity of connective tissue. Chromium, we've talked about selenium. Silicon or silica is another mineral that has been so robbed from the soils and so ripped from the food because it's all processed. And without silica, we don't have integrity of our structure, our very connective tissue, and that's everything, skin, hair, nails. A lot of people know the entire matrix, the cellular matrix that holds us together, the skeletal system, the visceral system, the nervous system. You name the system, and it's dependent upon silica for integrity of connective tissue. So if you don't have adequate silicon in the system, the metastasis, the chewing through, the enzyme breakdown of these cancer cells, chewing through and spreading, metastasizing.
Yeah, and that's what kills people.
Right, and so we can prevent that by ramping up silicon intake. And of course, you can take the horsetail extract, you can drink some of the tea, but you can't get enough. So we concentrate that tea into a food form that you can take in a tablet form, and you've got it.
That's awesome.
Those 3 basics, man.
Great,
awesome.
3 great supplements for big cancer. Over the summer, we traveled to Tijuana, Mexico to the Hope for Cancer Clinic. And we were able to get a tour of the clinic and to see the different innovative therapies that they are using. Join us now as Dr. Tony Jimenez, the medical director for the clinic, takes us on a tour.
The first one we're going to go into is the sonophotodynamic therapy room.
Okay, sonophotodynamic therapy.
Sonophotodynamic
Say that
therapy.
6 times fast. Okay, so what do we have here?
At the core of Hope for Cancer is energy medicine.
Right.
And we know we use energy medicine for diagnosis, right? Like PET scan, positive emission tomography, that's energy. We use MRI, CT scans, ultrasound. For heart, we check EKG. Those are all energy diagnostic tools. Right. But when we're using energy to help patients with cancer, then that's not conventionally accepted. And we know that in 1954, Michael Gerber, MD, wrote a book called Vibrational Medicine, which at that time he was far ahead of his time. Yeah. And now here at Hope for Cancer, we have the Sono, part of sonophotodynamic therapy. Okay. And this therapy is available at Hope for Cancer. We've been doing this for 9 years now. We're using sound to affect cancer cells. So we provide what's called a sensitizer, and the patient takes this under the tongue based on their body weight. Okay. This is absorbed by cancer cells 70 to 1. So for every 70 cancer cells, 1 normal cell absorbs this molecule.
What is the sensitizer?
The sensitizer is a derivative of chlorophyll or seaweed, right? So it's a naturally occurring product, has no toxicity, and it's absorbed by cancer cells 70 to 1. We wait 24 to 36 hours after administration. This way, most of the cancer cells, if not all, will absorb it, and normal cells release it. We don't know the mechanism why normal cells release it. I think it's a God thing, but that's another story.
But it works.
But it works. Yeah. So cancer cells retain it, but this substance by itself does nothing till we wake it up or activate it. And that is done using sound therapy of specific frequency, amplitude, intensity. Okay. And this is something that patients could do not only while they're at home for cancer, but for an extended period of time at home as a home program, because it's totally non-toxic.
Right, and then we got the photo part.
And then we have the phototherapy, and this is as you see, it has red lights, blue lights, and a row of lights that are not on, but guess what? They are on. It's just invisible light in the near-infrared spectrum. Okay. So photodynamic therapy will also wake up this sensitizer and allow it to activate itself within cancer cells, and that forms oxygen radicals, O-. And O-, as you know, are toxic to cancer cells, and they set off the apoptosis or programmed cell death. In addition to that, it provides a local inflammatory response, so thereby the immune system can come and target that area. Now we're going to the hyperbaric oxygen chamber room, and here we have hyperbaric oxygen. What this does is the patient comes in here, it's lying down very comfortable. We're increasing the pressure of oxygen to about 4 to 4.5 pounds per square inch. So we know oxygen and cancer don't combine. And so the 1 hour that the patient is in here, you're saturating the cells with oxygen.
Well, what's the normal pressure? You said 4.5 pounds per square. What's the normal pressure?
About 1.3.
So it's like 4 times as strong.
Exactly,
okay.
Yes.
And so that pressure is then forcing oxygen into the cells.
Yes. And patients love this therapy because you feel that oxygen load. Mm-hmm. And some patients tell me, can I stay in here 2 hours or 3 hours? Literally, you can, right? Because you can't get too much oxygen in this sense, but 1 hour is the duration of the treatment. Okay. This is one of the preferred treatments at Hope for Cancer, not only for its efficacy, but because it allows the patient to relax there for an hour. You know, you kind of are in a bubble, and you forget of what the fears and, you know, the conflicts that you have. Is just a good therapy in that sense as well.
In January of 2007, I was diagnosed with invasive bladder cancer. The recommendation and the mainstream medical treatment for invasive bladder cancer is to remove the bladder, prostate, and surrounding lymph nodes. Okay. This treatment had a cure rate of about 90% and would not require chemo or radiation.
Okay. So that's what you went with?
Yes, my daughter was 11 years old at the time of surgery, and I wanted with 90% shot of cure. That's pretty good odds. Mm-hmm. So I went with the surgery. However, when they did the surgery, they found that the cancer was also in my lymph nodes. This was previously undetected on my initial test. So suddenly I went from a possible cure rate of about 90% down to about 40%, okay. And I was going to have chemo. The initial procedure, when they thought it was just confined to my bladder, I was only going to have surgery and no chemo and no radiation. My surgeon set me up with an oncologist, one of the best around.
Okay.
When I met with the oncologist, he requested another scan. So the scan results came back. I had 3 tumors in my liver that were previously undetected on the initial scan.
Okay.
At that time, I asked my oncologist, was there a chance of a cure? He said, not really. He added that with bladder cancer metastasized to the liver, that the average life expectancy was 9 months. Some people die in 4 months, and he had never seen anyone last longer than 12 months. My brother, his wife, my wife, and I really started researching alternative cancer treatments, clinics, and so forth. May of 2008, I came to Hope for Cancer. I completed an inpatient program and continued with their home program. And I'm proud to say that since then, all of my tests and scans have indicated I am cancer-free.
Wow, that's awesome.
It is awesome.
It is.
It's a great day to be alive.
It is. Wow, 7 years.
7 years and counting.
Yeah.
You count every day, every minute.
I tell you what. And that's from a pretty bleak prognosis, right? Less than a year, you're alive.
Yeah.
8 years later.
Yeah, my urologist who did the initial surgery says that I'm a miracle. My oncologist says that he's never seen anyone with bladder cancer metastasized to the liver live this long.
I'm glad you're the first.
Hey, it's good to be in that group of one.
It is, isn't it?
This one.
And now your 11-year-old girl is 19?
Well, at the time of that initial prognosis of maximum 12 months to live, I didn't think that I would see her even through middle school. Now she's graduated from high school and just completed her first year of college.
That's so awesome.
It is awesome.
This is pulsating electromagnetic field therapy. Again, to affect the cell, we could pulsate water, we could pulsate the cells, we can help reduce the tumor size by energy, okay? And can I try it on you, Ty?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Sure.
So,
We're going to sit down here?
yeah, why don't you have a seat, please? Make yourself comfortable. I know you've had a long day.
I'll
this
take
will be very
any
beneficial. Let's
relaxation I
put
can
this
get at
around
this
your
point.
neck.
Okay.
And
you're not tying this to a truck or anything, are you?
No. So we'll start with a 3-minute session. I'm going to increase the intensity. You're going to feel maybe your muscles jumping a little bit. And here we're affecting. You're beginning to feel that?
Yeah, feel the twitching.
Yeah, feel the twitching. So now we're sending electromagnetic fields. This goes back to the Papimi in Greece when this was developed. Back many years ago, it was like a washer machine. Now technology has consolidated it, and we have it
Wow, this is really interesting.
Yeah, it's very good for pain.
Okay.
Very good for inflammation.
I've been having pain in the back of my neck. Should this help?
That should help. We're waiting for the 3-minute cycle to finish.
I like this though.
Yeah.
It actually feels good.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, after the very first. The first it was kind of odd, but now it feels good.
So, Ty, is it done?
Yeah.
You want to see what we just, what kind of energy we gave you?
Yeah.
All right. Can you stand up for a second,
Sure.
please? And hold this like this.
Yeah.
Okay. This is a chain, as you see.
Wow.
And so I take it closes the loop.
Some serious energy.
Serious energy. If I crank it up more, maybe we could take it this way so they can see it. Hold the bottom.
Okay.
See, but then when it forms a loop, it stops.
Right.
I take it away, put it in, and it's stabilizing the energy pattern.
Wow, that's interesting.
Very powerful.
Yeah. So this is the favorite treatment of many patients, the PEMF.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Very simple to use, very effective, and one of the staple treatments I offer for cancer.
Very cool. Thanks for showing me.
Surely.
Yeah,
I'm glad
I
you enjoyed
appreciate
it.
you letting me be the guinea pig. It was enjoyable, actually.
Okay, excellent. This is a near-infrared sauna as opposed to a far-infrared sauna.
So, Dr. Tony, what's the difference between a far infrared and a near infrared? I've got a little personal far infrared at the house, but I think it was one of your patients today that I talked to. He said, no, it's not far infrared, it's near infrared. What's the difference?
Near-infrared light has a greater depth of penetration than far-infrared. Near-infrared light is more detoxing. You know that saunas and infrared light pulls out toxic and heavy metals, right? Also, most far-infrared saunas in the market have too much EMFs, electromagnetic fields that are toxic, like a cell phone, right? There's a book called Sauna and Detoxification by Dr. Lawrence Wilson, MD, out of Arizona. And there he's considered the guru of sauna therapy. And, he talks about what I just mentioned to you, the importance of using near infrared as opposed to far infrared.
So near infrared is less EMFs and it penetrates further.
Here we have local direct hypothermia. What is hypothermia? High heat. We know, science knows, that cancer cells are heat sensitive. Normal human cells are heat resistant. That's why when we have a flu, a virus, an infection, we get a fever to kill the bugs, but it doesn't kill our healthy cells, right? So now even in the US, they're using hyperthermia with radiation, and they're saying, wow, the results are better. Well, of course, because most of the damage selectively to the cancer cells are being done by the local hyperthermia.
And so that's what this is. It's a local hyperthermia machine.
Yes, and it's a very easy, non-invasive therapy. This is the one. Of course, if let's say the patient has a tumor in the breast, right? We put a conductive gel, natural, non-toxic. We crank up the device, and then the treatment is done externally.
Okay.
And this is using both capacitance and resistance, different types of energy to get to superficial as well as to deep tumors. This is another favorite, Ty. I know I told you several of them are favorites, but this is not only a feel-good therapy, but a very effective therapy. With the combination of sonophotodynamic therapy and local hyperthermia, we're getting at least a 52% decrease in blood supply to the cancer tumors or masses during the stay of the patient here. We know that angiogenesis, right, is one of the characteristics, hallmarks of cancer. So if we could decrease the blood flow to the tumor, we're well on our way to having an effective therapy.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe you saw some patients today who had an 80 or 90% blood flow.
We did, as a matter of fact. Now, as opposed to what we've already seen with the near-infrared sauna, that's also hyperthermia, isn't it?
Correct.
This is just a different machine that does the same thing?
Not exactly. It doesn't do the same thing because that's more for pulling out toxins. That's more for superficial opening up of the pores, for cleansing, detoxing. This, local hyperthermia, and we also have full body hyperthermia here, is a therapeutic treatment for cancer.
Okay.
Meaning it's going after the cancer cells, it's going after the bugs.
Got it.
The viruses, the bacteria, the fungus.
So it's good doing both?
It's good doing both, yes.
Great. So just to summarize Dr. Tony's protocol there at the Hope for Cancer Clinic in Tijuana, he uses sonophotodynamic therapy, hyperbaric oxygen chambers, far infrared and near infrared saunas, a drastic change to the diet, restricting sugar almost completely. And my favorite, as you saw, was the PEMF, which is pulsed electromagnetic frequencies. If you saw him put that little thing around my neck, he could have turned up the voltage. It probably would have taken me like this, but at the low voltage that they use it at, it actually is a selectively toxic treatment for cancer cells.
Well, the initial feeling was absolute terror and disbelief and sure death. And, you know, I watched my mother die at 48 of breast cancer, and my grandmother at 36, she died of ovarian cancer. And so here I was, 46, and was it my time? Because that's what happened in my family. But I was absolutely terrified. But I also knew inside of me that I really, there's no way you could have dragged me down the conventional path for chemo or radiation or anything like that. I knew every part of my being not to do that. I knew to have the surgery, to have this mass removed. I knew that. But there was no way I was going to do chemo. You'd have to straitjacket me and drag me in to do it, because I knew not to do that. And Dr. Tony was my hope, because I knew him, and I'd known him for years, and I'd seen the successes that, you know, I'd send my clients, I'm in the holistic world too, and I would send my people down there when they needed cancer help. And they always said, I wish I would have come here first. And so I remembered that, and that was my hope. And so I called him up and I said, hey, this is what's going on. And so he gave me my hope. And they gave me my hope. But it's hard to have hope when you're indoctrinated into this world and your belief system is cancer equals death, or cancer equals chemo and radiation. And so there's a lot of fear out there, and you have to really look inside yourself and not be afraid. It's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying to get that diagnosis, where your whole world implodes in on you. You know, my son was 9, and he was my big reason why I had to do something different, because I watched my mother die and my grandmother died, both from these cancers, and I knew that I wasn't going to leave my son without a mom. And so I just looked death in the eye and I said no. My will was so strong because I was not leaving him without a mother. You see, there's another piece to the story in that 5 years before, I didn't have a diagnosis, but I became really ill, and it turned out I had Lyme disease in my brain. And that kind of set me up for cancer down the road, this weak immune system. And, you know, back then when you have a little guy running around, you know, you have to do whatever it takes to get well to be there. And so I had to do that twice, and he was my saving grace twice. So I had to figure out the Lyme when the doctor said there's nothing wrong with you, it's all in your head. Well, it really was. It was actually in my brain. And so I had to heal myself, and I did, and he was my motivation. So for anybody out there that, you know, is faced with these kinds of things, it's like you look to your why. Why do I need to get well? You know, is it my kids? Is it my grandkids? Is it my husband or my wife? What is it? Why do you need to get well? And you focus on that, because that's what's going to get you through it. And it has to be a really strong reason, while you'll do whatever it takes to get well. And, you know, and I did whatever it takes, and that's why I'm here. I still to this day have not looked at the statistics for ovarian cancer, but according to other people, I shouldn't be here.
While creating this series has been fun and exciting, it's really a very serious responsibility, because every topic we cover, every fine detail has a purpose. And no, it's not to make money, it's to give you what you need to save and protect your life. We did not receive any financial kickbacks from any expert, doctor, clinic, supplement, or product of any kind. Every piece of information was solely for the purpose of giving you the vital information you and your loved ones deserve to know, and it's the greatest honor for us to give you that as a gift, simply because we believe that your life is precious. You deserve to be healthy and happy, free from toxicity, free from every negative influence on your body. And through this episode, you've seen clearly how to avoid toxins and how to eat foods that foster life and vigor. Today you've seen that excitotoxins are to be avoided at all costs if you truly desire to live a life free from the fear of cancer. You've seen how these excitotoxins not only excite and kill healthy cells, but as the documented evidence proves, these excitotoxins actually cause cancer to originate in the body, which is called, as you know from tonight, oncogenesis. I know you'll never look at a product containing aspartame, Splenda, sucralose, or any of its other evil artificial relatives the same again. I know for some of you, watching this episode may result in a trash can full of junk food that you've removed from your fridge or your pantry. Now, that's a quick way to say no to cancer. Seriously, coupled with healthy living, that's the single best way to eradicate cancer from your body right now. And what a better way to restock your home and body than with Nature's Pharmacy. You've seen how nature can heal your body and promote health, and that a garden actually should be better understood as a pharmacy with plants containing actual medicines that are lethal to cancer, while exponentially strengthening immunity and vitality. You've also seen how sound and light therapy are in fact advanced scientific discoveries that have been proven to dramatically aid the body in the fight against cancer, as countless cancer survivors have confirmed. You've seen with Trina, with a stage 4 ovarian cancer diagnosis, who beat cancer with the aid of sound and light therapy and a combination of non-toxic therapies, once again proving that cancer is in fact not a death sentence. Wow, it's really amazing the amount of material we covered in just a short time tonight. I hope you learned a lot, and I hope you're ready for tomorrow's episode, because we're going to cover more ground that's vital in your fight against cancer or to prevent cancer. Tomorrow night, we're going to hit some of the blind spots, some of the things that you may not be aware of that could have a direct impact on a cancer diagnosis, whether it be your mouth, root canals, metals in your mouth, the spine. Did you know if your spine is not properly aligned, that could result in cancer? Emotions, the emotional aspect of cancer. Recent studies that have shown a direct link between emotions like fear and stress and a cancer diagnosis. And heavy metals, not just in your mouth, but in vaccines. Yes, tomorrow night we are going to talk about vaccines, a very controversial, hotly contested topic today. A lot of people are very opinionated on it, but we're going to try to keep the opinion out and stick straight to the science. Tomorrow night's episode is going to be extremely valuable in your journey, in your quest to learn all that you can to prevent and or treat cancer. You don't want to miss it. In the meantime, have a great evening. God bless you, and we'll see you tomorrow.
I believe Ty is changing the world, especially the world of cancer for starters. He's been able to reach out to people like nobody has done before. I think there's a lot of people who have tried to put out courses, videos, you name it, different type of ways of reaching people. But I don't know what magic Ty has. Whatever it is, it's working. He's been able to reach so many people, but with a lot of good, strong, credible information. I love the fact that he doesn't make decisions for patients. He lets patients decide, what is best for them. And he's giving them a platform where they can look at a lot of these videos and analyze the information and really make up their minds based on not just what their logic tells them, but what their heart tells them is the right thing to do. That kind of information is invaluable, to be able to get face-to-face with Dr. Jimenez when, even though you don't necessarily know him, and to make that connection is priceless. Something that he's done a massive service to a lot of patients. A lot of patients have come to Hope for Cancer after watching The Quest for the Cures, and they have made decisions earlier, way earlier than they would have, and they've increased their chances at survival and at actually thriving through their lifetime. And I think that is huge, to be able to accomplish that. Kudos to Ty, absolutely. He's changing the world, and we love the fact that we are along the ride with him.
I just love what Ty Bollinger is doing. It's incredible to just share this message with so many people, giving people alternative. I love it. I think it's just such a powerful way of sharing this message with others. I absolutely think that everyone should have a copy of the DVDs at home and show it to others. I actually like to give this as a Christmas present or birthday present. Even if they don't have cancer, just for overall health, they can follow all the recommendations, because here we're talking about cancer, but it's for overall health and also for prevention. This information needs to be accessible to people straight away, and we need to be aware of what alternative treatments are there, because cancer can happen at any time, or other diseases just strike without any warning. So we need to be prepared, and we need to know what to do in cases like that. Not to depend on a doctor's opinion, but just to empower ourselves and know what to do.
Ty and I come from the same place. We're like brothers from a different mother, you might say. And we have struggled and suffered through stories that are similar. When I first saw his book come out, I got it and I read it cover to cover, because my story started the same way when my mother died of cancer. And she was diagnosed, and within 2 weeks she was dead. My dad was diagnosed subsequent to that, and it took him 16 years to die. He was basically tortured by the medical community, 24 drugs a day, the cancer moving from his removed kidney to his other good kidney. And so my dad suffered immeasurably over 16 years. My mom went fast. The medical establishment could not help either one of my parents. And I was there when both my mom and dad took their last breath. I held my mom's head in my hands when she took her last breath, and I can tell you, that changes you. I watched my dad at 4:02 in the morning. I watched his chest heave for the last time, his last breath. These things change you. And since I was already in an industry that was similar, I decided to find out what this cancer racket was all about. So Ty, you and I have taken similar pathways, and I know you know that, and I'm delighted that we've become great friends through this process. But I see other people jumping on board, and that's why I'm so happy and satisfied with the work that you guys are doing, because we're getting more people involved, more experts, more people who've had similar circumstances, more people that are asking why. Why me? Why my folks? Why my family? And now they're starting to get answers. This series gives them hope. When you give someone hope, then they have a chance to live. And they do, many of them do. I would say most of them who pursue it do, whereas on the other end, most of them die. Hope. They grab onto hope. You need to keep giving them hope, and that's what we do. And the truth about cancer, there's no other way that I can frame it. There's a lot of stuff in there that is great, but hope, that's where it's distilled down to, and that changes lives, and that saves lives.
Join the movement, support the mission, save lives. When you choose to own The Truth About Cancer, A Global Quest, you allow us to continue to research, interview, and share this life-saving information absolutely free. And as always, a portion of each sale gets donated to cancer charities that are doing real cancer research and are actually helping cancer patients each and every day. You're also covered by our full 90-day money-back guarantee, so there is absolutely no risk to you to check it out. If this is not everything that you hoped it could be, all you got to do is contact our friendly customer support team and we will refund every penny back to you. You have absolutely nothing to lose and everything to gain. Please consider owning this series today and supporting us in eradicating this devastating disease. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.